Hello again, thank you for joining me for another video. So today we're going to delve into the topic of shame, which I think everybody thinks they know about. But if your spiritual awakening has plateaued or is lacking some fulfillment, if you're miserable, even though you know for sure you've had a contact with the divine, with your own inner strength, with your own inner peace. Maybe you've had a miracle and you still suffer. This is what I've been stuck in for a really long time. And I thought I understood what shame was because it's a pretty obvious one, right? The emotion of shame is horrible. It's like when a bad smell comes in, you don't have to wonder, is that going to turn pleasant? It's never going to turn pleasant. A bad smell is a bad smell, and the same is true for shame. It's one of those emotions you can't mistake because it's awful. And so I was just trying to dig into. Actually, I said, please show me what is getting in the way of me feeling like it's worth being here, because realistically this all just feels, generally speaking, oppressive and suffocating, and I'm afraid to do literally everything, and the only thing that feels good is when I'm all by myself in a little cocoon where my mind is not thinking about anything. And I remember when I used to enjoy life, like really enjoyed it. And I wouldn't say that the times when I thoroughly enjoyed it, I was really like awake. I knew that God was real, but it was like background stuff, not a big deal. And then I went through this whole like bursting open, and you would think it would get better. But it's just been like, one layer of stinky after another that you have to stop. You have to teach yourself to not pay attention to, because suddenly you see it all, right? So shame hides. It hides really, really well. And so while I was trying to take the advice that Spirit was giving me to look deeper into what I've actually created out of shame from very young, at very young age. And I think our whole society is actually built that way also, to cage us in these lives that might somehow allow us to avoid shame. They might not be very fulfilling lives, but shame is so potent, so toxic to the soul. It's like slamming your soul up against time. A thing happened, it destroyed you a little bit, and you can't change it. So shame is like regret coupled with horror that kind of sits in there. And if you are a creator being of any kind, you're going to attract more of that. And in order to avoid it, you might do a whole bunch of stuff that isn't actually natural to your being to avoid that sense of shame. So you build up all of these walls, and that's like everybody. Everybody's doing that. We live in a combined force field we call society, which is get out of shame ville. That's where we're living. We live in the realm of we have not figured out how to deal with shame. So I looked a little deeper into the word ashamed, because I tend to find a lot of my deeper esoteric revelations, if you will, from looking at etymology and finding a meaning. It connects an esoteric principle to a meaning that I can actually apply into my real life when I do that. And so I was looking into the word ashamed and thought ash, am ash, am ashed. And that's kind of how it came to my brain, because ashed is like, oh, it's a destroyed thing, a thing that's been destroyed. And that really is, it's a grieving that can come from the part of yourself that either got destroyed by someone else's ignorance or got destroyed by your own. It's a part of you that isn't going to be done again. We live in a very repetitive, cyclical, returning type of environment on planet Earth here. And when you have a thing you don't ever want to return again, there's a grieving. There's a grieving that happens. It feels weird. It creates some blocks. It does weird things on metaphysical levels to choose not to include something going forward. And you have to actually like contemplate that a little bit to really grasp the full message I'm trying to convey here. When I actually like saw it, like saw those pieces of myself that I needed to let go of, really, because they were not something I ever want to experience again. It is a regret. And it's like that feeling of making a mistake, but it's with your own self. So it's a deep soul level noticing that happens. So how to deal with it? How to deal with it is another story. So that is another story. So looking into the concept of ash, because the word itself has meaning, deep spiritual purpose. We have it in a lot of our religions, our mythology, our spiritual teachings. The concept of ash is important. It's a purifying substance. So as we think about the mistakes we made that caused shame, rather than continuing to allow it to sit there, where we build up this whole world to avoid it, to have peace with the parts of yourself that are gone. And will exist only in, and maybe, even that will be lost too, the memory of a thing. Memories are highly attached to the body and not necessarily something that the soul has to be embedded with. I think that's pretty clear if you start contemplating reincarnation. So when we look at this issue of shame and how do we deal with shame going forward so we're not stuck, it's looking at a grief process. It's looking at the magnetized nature of destruction within our being, because it's like coming up against time, and then it does not move any forward. So we literally put these weird little boundaries there, necessarily so. And so you don't take on other people's assumptions based on shit they don't know anything about. If your life is going bad and you have a thing that you have not deleted yet because you're still alive, so all the things that happen to this body, it's a grieving that you carry with you. It's that moment that's not going to return again, and that feels like shame. And then other people will use that to basically act like you should be on a lower status than them. You're in the cremation grounds. You're not allowed to go out and touch others. It's a coming to terms with being the idea you have of hierarchy and perfection. So it isn't just dealing with ego, it's dealing with collective ego. So your own story is enmeshed in the chords of everyone else's stories and how they are dealing with shame and mistakes and things they don't want to look at. And so the mundane can become oppressive in that way, because it's like everybody is like, what are they asleep to? You know what I mean? Instead of being, okay, it's okay to have whatever role in society you have, we take it as the role you have is based on. And that's inaccurate. And it calls more destruction to ourselves. I wonder if I have explained this well enough. Shame is like the first thing that wakes you up. Shame is the thing that gets you to realize something isn't right here. The discomfort that you feel, the intolerable nature of that emotion, that loss of status, the fall from grace, that's all connected to shame. And as soon as you notice it, you can wake up. You can start to wake up. And then the trick then is to be a decent human being without having to rely on that kind of auto correct that shame is when you're sleepwalking. You sleepwalk until you feel shame and you're like, oh, what have I done? And then the conscience, the inner conscience wakes up. So think of yourself as that phoenix that rises from the ashes, and how much mythology we have regarding ash and purification and the Kundalini fire. And don't think so much of the mistakes that might have impacted you from other people's desires or your own as something that you need to receive, punishment for. You need to reach out into the cleansing of the part that's destroyed. The reason it feels so yucky is because it is a part of you that is destroyed that you're not going to experience again. All of the good parts of you, you can experience those again and again and again. The part that was a mistake, you feel shame, and then you don't want to feel it again. So there's also a little bit of grief there. It's like this thing that comes up, this wall that comes up, where you like smash into time. It's an interesting metaphysical ripple when you kind of get a hold of it and see it, and the esoteric ins and outs of that, and looking at the, like, if you look at the symbolism for the ash tree, it's quite interesting, actually. A tree of life, purifying the mistakes in time that we make, so that our soul is not magnetized to destruction. So hopefully that gave you a little food for thought. That's what I'm working on right now, trying to clean out the cobwebs of shame. I think it's real easy for other people to throw their shame on you. I don't know if I already said it in this video, but like that reverse vampirism, right? Other people will say the reason you're in the position you're in is because you did something wrong and you've cut a part of yourself out or should cut a part of yourself out, and that's what you get. But mostly it comes by way of other people harming us, having power over us, and us not being prepared. And then we create whatever we need to create in order to avoid ever experiencing that again. But if it happens when we're a kid, we don't have enough information to actually create well. We might create well to keep ourselves safe then, but the creations you need to make as an adult or middle-aged and an older adult are different. They look different, and you have to go into it from a different mind space. So hopefully that helped a little bit. I'm digging into it more. I'll probably do another video on it, but it can really impact the amount of reward and good vibes that we allow to come our way. And if we've got too much shame, we're going to just magnetize more of it. And it's really one of those, it's an important marker on our journey once we actually learn how to dissolve it. I think sometimes people do energy work and they pluck stuff out. I think this is it does require a fire. It requires a fire at the root, and a willingness to dissolve completely whatever piece of you is continuing to vibrate at the destructive level, and let it go and let yourself be renewed in the same way that a forest fire will burn everything down and start fresh from new seedlings. Trust the process. Till next time, take care.